There have been more cases of animals entering human-populated areas. Wildlife rescue groups say they are seeing a near 65% increase last year compared to 2023. But they add that people are more mindful to call for professional assistance in such cases of human-wildlife contact. Still, experts are concerned that there could be even more encounters in the future as development projects pick up this year. And that could also lead to more animals being killed on the road. Now, to tell us more about this, I'm now joined by CNA's Rachel Teng. Rachel, thank you so much for coming in. First of all, tell us more about this issue. What led you to cover this particular story?
Yes, Shah. So people around me have told me about their own encounters, up close and personal with different kinds of wildlife, some even going into their own homes. And of course, recurring cases with wild boars are also common. You may have seen the incident of a monkey at Changi Airport that had to be escorted out on social media. And as the rainy weather clears up, we might also see more cases of animals coming out of their habitats. So I was inspired to knock on doors in certain neighborhoods, and I found that the issue is actually very prevalent, especially in some estates. Let's watch.
For more than 30 years, Mr. Chong Bui and his family have called Bedok home. But they, alongside their neighbours, have had an ongoing issue with a persistent visitor, the civet.
Actually, they are a nuisance. Yeah, because sometimes they go to neighbor's kitchen, they mess up the kitchen, they attack chicken, birds.
One of his pet birds even died at the hands of a civet attack many years ago. And Mr. Bu's estate isn't the only one facing this issue.
Residents in the Siglap area tell me that civets would run around in their ceilings at night, causing them sleep disruptions. Now, wildlife groups say that these areas used to be plantations, which is what keeps the civets around even after decades because of the fruiting trees. Now, such areas might see more human-wildlife conflict.
Other parts of Singapore are seeing different wildlife visitors. For VG, a long-time resident of Upper Thomson, monkeys are the usual culprits. A mango tree right outside her house used to be a hotspot. She then worked with her neighbours and the authorities to replace it with a non-fruit-bearing tree.
They used to come almost every day in big batches, like 6 or 7 with babies and everything, like a family, before when the mango tree was there. Now that the mango tree is not there, they come maybe 1 or 2 monkeys at a time, maybe once a week at the most, because there's not much food.
As it turns out, it's all about solving the root of the problem, according to a wildlife specialist.
Removal is just a quick fix, but the ultimately we have to understand why are the snake here, right? Why did the snake come here specifically? What's the attractant? And when you ask enough whys, you will get to the root cause. And then when you address the root cause, subsequently anything going after will eventually be gone.
Now, VG makes small adjustments to her life to coexist with her non-human visitors. She harvests fruits that monkeys don't eat and makes sure there's no food left out overnight.
It seems like these encounters, Rachel, are getting more common indeed. How concerned should we be about these animals then?
Right, so we've just seen those encounters with civets and monkeys, which wildlife rescue groups tell me actually that form the bulk of the calls that they get. As we've heard from the wildlife specialist, Joe, with civets, for example, he gets about 4 to 5 cases in 1 week alone. And why these are of concern, just beyond the inconvenience or the scare, is that actually the accumulation of their waste may pose a hygiene problem. So they tend to nest nearest to food sources, so there's a risk of contamination for wildlife to enter if their urine or feces are around where we usually eat. So Joe tells me that what people can do is actually mesh up their ceilings or crevices in their roofs, so it's harder for wildlife to come in. Ultimately, in the Garden City, it's hard to completely avoid such animal encounters, right? Especially when a lot of our built environment actually was built on former forest areas.
And so this issue extends to beyond homes too.
Yes, exactly. So this brings me to my next point. If these animals actually venture out into the roads, then that's when the issue of roadkill actually comes into the fore. They could get injured or killed. And according to national statistics, around 10 animals are killed on the road every month. And we also have to bear in mind that these are just the ones that are reported. There are a lot of small animals like snakes and lizards that may not leave a trace after a few cars run over them. So you might have seen some recent incidents as well of more endangered animals being hit, and that's even more unfortunate. So, for example, the Samba deer, 2 of them have died from road accidents last year alone in 2024. On the right here, also a lot of other animals that are vulnerable or critically endangered, such as the Sunda pangolin that you see on the left. Others include the smooth-coated otter, leopard cat, Raffles-banded langur, which is a type of native primate that we have here in Singapore. And when it comes to the critically endangered pangolin, wildlife groups tell me that they've done research and they've noticed an exponential increase in reported roadkill over the years.
You mentioned that around 10 animals are killed on the road every month. That's quite a number, isn't it? Where are some common hotspots when it comes to roadkill?
Yeah, that's a great question. So if you take a look at the map here, there's mainly the expressways and the fringes of the central western reserves. These are the places to take note of because they are the key forested areas. And when some of these roads cut through, wildlife tends to venture out. And, for example, with the pangolin, wildlife experts believe that the population might be expanding or dispersing. And when that happens, they unfortunately meet with road accidents. Experts are, of course, still doing research to find out more, such as to quantify the actual reason this is happening, the population size and growth rate, so they can better make recommendations for how to reduce roadkill cases. So I also joined wildlife groups to experience for myself how they handle such wildlife cases. Let's take a watch.
This sanctuary is where injured or rescued animals get a second chance at life, from civets to pangolins, and even birds and snakes. Every day here, the team at the Animal Concerns and Research Society is on high alert, ready for whatever comes next.
It all starts off with a call. Like somebody sees an animal in their home that shouldn't be there, then they give us a call or they drop us a text. From there, we assess the photos, find out what animal it is. If it's a reptile like a snake, for example, usually people will be less tolerant of that, and we'll have to relocate the animal safely to a better environment.
Right now, a call has just come in, and it's indeed a snake. I'm on the move with Carly to check it out. This garden snake ended up in a swimming pool. After making sure it's not a venomous species, he secures it for release further from people. When it comes to managing conflicts between humans and snakes, the Mandai Wildlife Group also microchips rescued pythons on the road. That's in order to track their movements and population size. And on top of rescue, it's also about rehab. With this litter of baby civets who've lost their parents, vets are slowly minimizing contact to ensure they don't get too comfortable with humans. And when they're ready, they'll be set free. But not all stories end this way and meet their doom out in the open. Some are instantly killed on the road, while some manage to hang on till they get help. But often they reach veterinarians in such bad shape that they have to be euthanized anyway. Wildlife groups try and learn as much from these tragedies as they can so they don't die in vain. When it comes to the critically endangered Sunda pangolin, for example, more are dying on the roads. Latest figures show that around 40 pangolins are killed or injured every year. The situation has become so dire that to preserve the population, sperm samples are collected from those who don't make it.
So in the event that later on down the road, if we're at a point where we are able and would like to do artificial insemination or other assisted reproductive techniques, we actually already have a bank, of semen ready.
Lucky you that you were saying, Rachel. Go ahead.
Yeah, it was incredibly eye-opening to be able to see, accompany the teams and see just how many animals were in need of rescue in just one day alone. And I also thought, this is the perfect time to talk about this as we usher in the Chinese New Year of the snake. It's maybe time to think about the native snakes that we actually have right here in Singapore, as well as other wildlife.
Lucky you that you actually got to visit some of those animals on site. What are the possible solutions for this then, considering that Singapore is land scarce and we know that it is difficult to keep all nature spaces untouched?
Yes, so I spoke to environmental consultants, lawyers, as well as the National Parks Board. So what I've gathered is that the process of assessing environmental damage in new developments has been improving over the years, although some are still pushing for standalone legislation in order to ensure that we do not go backward on our current practices, as well as to ensure that we have better standardization across the industry. And you're exactly right that in Singapore, sometimes we have no choice but to clear areas for housing development. But we can learn how to coexist with nature, to build up connectivity and to develop mindfully. So, for example, the National Parks Board has built up a lot of modern infrastructure along the roadkill hotspots, for example. There's the well-known Eco-Link at BKE, but there are also aerial rope bridges. And they've also found that culverts, which are underground open drains, these are actually key connectors for wildlife to travel in. Although that being said, it's not entirely sustainable in terms of cost and feasibility to have these structures all around the island. Let's hear from Nature Society Singapore on this.
An Eco-Link, which is above ground, is a fairly expensive piece of hardware to put. The other solution is to have culverts and to allow the ground-dwelling animals to go through the culverts. But the big challenge there is to retrofit a culvert underneath a road is a major engineering undertaking. So you have these sort of problems that are very hard to deal with. A lot of our connectivity is based on avian connectivity because they don't need to go on the ground, but we have these challenges with ground. And that's why we have the pangolins turning up dead on our road systems.
And what's concerning, is that experts expect more animals to be displaced in the near future because of new developments such as the upcoming Sembawang and Woodlands forest areas. Assessments show that the area is actually home to a lot of endangered wildlife. But the solution in this case was not to halt development altogether, but to transplant rare plants elsewhere, as well as add speed bumps and speed limits to minimize roadkill. Also, there could be a gradual clearing of the forest so that wildlife can slowly be shepherded into other nearby habitats rather than being suddenly displaced. But ultimately in future, wildlife may still linger in the area, as we've currently noticed in residential areas that used to be forested. So I also spoke to Member of Parliament Louis Ng, who's known for advocating for wildlife, and of course, he's also the founder of Acres. He says that HDB towns can be designed to discourage wildlife from coming too close to humans. For example, making it harder for birds to perch on laundry poles, as well as making it harder for monkeys to climb on HDB blocks. So he says he's also filed a question in Parliament next month regarding the Sembawang and Woodlands developments and whether there is a longer-term plan for wildlife. Let's hear from him.
I've asked what the exact location, how it will be done, and who will be doing it. But the real question really is the carrying capacity of our forest. As it shrinks and we just shepherd everything into maybe the Central Catchment Nature Reserve, are we really sure that there's enough space, enough food for these animals, and if not, they're forced out onto the roads and becoming more and more urbanized?
We will certainly look forward to that being discussed. In the meantime, Rachel, what can the public do to balance such wildlife encounters? What are some do's and don'ts?
So firstly, if you see wildlife anywhere, you can and of course you should admire them, but do keep a distance always, and definitely do not feed them, whether intentionally or unintentionally, because this may cause them to be reliant on us for food, and they might turn aggressive in future when people don't feed them. On the road, drive mindfully, especially near forested areas. Slow down on smaller roads and be vigilant not just of humans, but animals that might also be crossing the roads at ground level. If you are a motorist who has unfortunately hit an animal, stop the vehicle if you can, and then call the Acres or NParks hotlines, it's good to have these numbers saved so you can easily access them when you need it. Do not try to assist the animal yourself, which could be dangerous for both yourself and the animal. And finally, wildlife groups emphasize that there is no excuse to harm an animal out of fear or hatred. There have been past cases of a python being abused or hit because it consumed a house pet, even though the house pet has unfortunately already died. There have also been recent cases of a python being scorched, as you can see here. This is just very unfortunate, and it's not just unethical, but also illegal. And finally, if for more, you can check out the Our Wild Neighbours campaign online. It's a platform where wildlife groups have come together to share their recommendations for how to interact with different types of wildlife. So concerned citizens can also get in touch with the Urban Redevelopment Authority, which puts out 5-year plans where people can voice their concerns long before development plans are actually carried out. All in all, you know, the common thread that I hear from speaking to all these groups is that Singaporeans can afford to relearn how we live and interact with our native wildlife. You know, maybe to treat them like fellow Singaporeans as well. Explore options to coexist with wildlife and sometimes make compromises if needed. It's all about learning how to be close to nature, but in a safe manner for both humans and animals.
Very useful tips, Rachel. Thank you. And a wonderful story to help us learn how to coexist with our wildlife better. So thank you very much for that. CNE's Rachel Teng there, speaking to us live here in the studio.